Welcome to Game Sound Words. Let's take a look at March of the Ants. March of the Ants has competitive and cooperative variants as well as solo play. It retails for $45, but I've seen it as low as $31. In March of the Ants, you play an ant colony, and your object is to get the most colony points by the end of the game. In the standard game, you start with 2 cards and a nest mat, onto which you'll place 5 larvae and 2 food. You also get to place 1 ant into the Great Tunnel. Wait, that's a cube, not an ant. It's an ant. Imagine. The first phase of each round is the worker phase. Work. I didn't sign up for this. You're an ant. What did you expect? Anyway, during the worker phase, you have several choices. You can pay 1 precious food to explore by turning over a hex and adding it to the meadow. It has to connect with a tunnel. When you do that, your ant, which you have to move into the hex, will inhabit one of the collection sites on that hex. On this one, the ant can inhabit a site that gives 1 larva or 2 or food. During the harvest, you'll get that resource, if you're still there, that is. When you explore, every other player gets to move one of their larvae into the Great Tunnel, or a hex they already inhabit. You can also pay 1 food to march by moving up to 5 times. Movement consists of moving larvae into the Great Tunnel or a hex you inhabit, which you have to do first, then moving from one hex to another. Each other player can move an ant, but not a larva, 1 step. You can also pay 1 food to draw 2 cards, known as foraging. There are 3 types of cards: evolution, event, and colony goal. Every player gets a larva when you forage. The last choice in the worker phase is playing a card. This is the only action that doesn't get paid for in food. That's because you pay in larvae or ants. You mean we're cannibals? Not yet. For now, we just sacrifice them. Back to those 3 types of cards. This is an evolution card. The card gives you a special ability, and putting that evolution on your player mat helps you in battle, movement, or harvest, depending on the part of the body you evolve. So we just gave up our young to be cooler, to be more evolved, thank you. And for points. Every time you evolve your whole body, you get 3 points, which is a lot. Trust me. You can also play an event card, which makes something happen. Aptly named, then. Or a colony goal, which lets you do something right away. This one gives you food and gives you points during the summer phase if you've met the goal. You can keep 2 of these at a time. Play continues around until 2 players have rested, which is like passing, except it gives you a larva, and food if play comes back around to you, plus you still get your reactions. The second phase of each round is the soldier phase. Battle occurs in each contested hex, which is a hex where there are more ants than collection sites, assuming there are at least 2 players or a centipede in them. Centipede? Why would we battle centipedes? Because we're ants. Anyway, the player who inhabits the control site is the defender. The player with the most ants in the hex, other than the defender, is the invader. You start a battle by figuring out your army strength. We'll pretend blue has 1 head evolution and red has none. Then you roll a die, right? No, you don't. Then you choose a card from your hand. That's your ferocity. You add it to your army strength. Then you roll a die? No. 2 dice? No. Then the player with the highest number wins the battle. No die roll. No, just casualties. We're all going to die. No, just some of us. The loser loses ants equal to the winner's army strength, not counting ferocity. The winner loses ants equal to half the loser's army strength, though he always gets to keep 1. The winner's ants die too. Of course, they were in battle. The winner also gets a point and can move any ants into any vacant collection sites. Imagine yellow had also inhabited that hex with 2 ants like this. If the hex is still contested and a different player is involved, there's another battle. This just keeps happening until the hex isn't contested anymore. Centipede battles work much the same way, except centipedes draw a card to determine their army strength. Blue only has 2 plus his head evolution. If he has a card, he should play it because the centipede will get to draw 1 more card. Blue plays a card with a ferocity of 3 for a total of 6. The centipede plays a card with 4. The centipede wins and remains in the hex. This is a bit more like it. During the queen phase, everyone checks their abdomens for any special abilities. Then they harvest from the collection sites they inhabit. So blue would get 2 larvae, 2 food, and 1 card. And then we have to feed our ants. 1 food will normally feed 4 ants. Blue has 4 ants, so she will be safe. But if we don't have enough food, 1 larva will feed 1 ant. We eat our young. Not technically. We eat our unborn. Like an egg. Ugh. And then the queen issues a royal decree in which we get 2 food or 5 larvae. That would have been more helpful before we ate, but less like a game. And then there's the slumber phase. You keep going on about how we're ants, but that's a dog. But the picture of Queen Victoria didn't bother you? In the slumber phase, players get a point for each hex they control that's connected to the Great Tunnel, so blue would have 2. They also get points for succeeding at any of their colony goals. Confession time. I was really hungry when I was making this video. The talk of eating larvae didn't destroy your appetite. The whole process repeats several times depending on the number of players and the length of game you want to have. After the final leaf is turned, hilarious, the points are tallied and the game ends. There are bonuses for having the most cards, most larvae, and most food. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the solo and cooperative variants, but you should. I'll explain later. You're not going to tell them now. No, you're just going to leave them like that. Yes. They're basically the same as the competitive game, except that after each player's turn in the worker phase, the centipedes either invade, advance, or rampage. It's hard, and that makes for a good game. The centipede horde gets points in several ways. They have a horde now. Yes, that's awful. Yes, in the best way. How can awful be good? It just can. They get a point for each centipede in a hex, and every time a centipede enters the Great Tunnel. The centipedes win if they have a score higher than any player, which makes the cooperative play especially interesting. Despite what that ridiculous woman says, I'm the ridiculous one, there's plenty to love about March of the Ants. March of the Ants mixes a lot of familiar ideas from games, tiling, worker placement, area control, resource management, and battle. The result could have been, maybe even should have been, something a lot like this. Instead, it works. They walked a fine line between using mechanics that are available in new ways and just imitating what's already out there. The worker placement is interesting because it's tied to exploration, and nobody goes home at the end of the shift. Instead of just trying to deny another player a worker spot, you're sometimes actively fighting for it. The area control is a relatively small part of the game, but every point in March of the Ants matters, so you still have to pay attention to which hexes you control. Using food, larvae, and ants as your resources is really interesting. Every decision you make costs you in some way, but because those resources are readily available, or you can make them available by exploring, it's not as frustrating as, say, feeding your people in Agricola. The battle in this game is especially interesting because you will lose ants whether you win or lose the battle. It's another example of how delicately the game balances risk and reward. You can often just avoid the battle, but you may be giving up precious resources to do so. Plus, you might just need the points. Battles also make evolving your character important. My husband loves that this is a power-up mechanism that doesn't feel like a power-up, because he also plays those games. It's really nice to see a game take on a unique theme, and this game is dripping with theme. While I'm not exactly convinced I'm an evolving ant, I do feel like every move I make supports the theme. the cooperative version. It's what a cooperative game should be. And that's coming from someone who's not generally a fan of cooperative games. I think its strength as a cooperative is that you can see what's coming, sort of. You know that centipede is going to do one of three things, but you don't know which, and you don't know how strong it will be. It forces you to gamble sometimes. Because each player has to beat the centipede horde, it also gives players some self-interest that deals a little with the problem of having a leader who just tells everyone what to do. Back to the game as a whole, the designers worked hard to include a lot of good choices. There are several variants, including a primitive colony variant where players have different powers, which push them towards specific strategies. There are also advanced hexes that add centipedes and events. The game is complex, but the player mat and reference card tell you most of what you need to know, which makes teaching this game easier than some others. It's best with 3 or more players. It's fine with 2, but 4 seems like a sweet spot. That's when the battles become really important and less avoidable. No game can be for everyone, right? This is a game about ants. It's unashamed about it, so if you don't like ants and can't imagine trying to play as one, move on. You could play this game very nicely, but it won't be as much fun. That's not to say it's cutthroat. There's too much going on for that, but there is battle, and you definitely won't be playing solitaire. March of the Ants gives players lots of choices, which can lead to players sitting around trying to decide what to do instead of actually doing something. The cards in March of the Ants add a lot of randomness to the game. You have to decide if you like that or not, but since they affect your ability to battle and to gain special abilities, they do influence the game. The meadow art and the card art are both good, but they don't exactly seem to go together. If this look bothers you that much, you probably shouldn't buy this game. First off, I think March of the Ants is a great game. Everything about it is well executed, and I love seeing different themes in board games. The cooperative game is especially strong, though I suggest playing with a house rule where the ants can battle the centipedes together. While I was sometimes frustrated by the hindrance of the cards I drew, especially because I wasted food on them, this was my husband's favorite part of the game. He likes it because it feels thematic. You're an ant. Circumstances are out of your control. And frankly, that's a minor complaint on my end. The fact is, I like games where you have to adjust your strategy. The thing I like most is that this game combines so many things I like about other games, and it does it really elegantly. It's complex, there are lots of strategies to explore, and your choices matter. They can be super successful or downright devastating. But it's also fun, really fun. This is a big game from a small company that just happens to also be in Oregon. Give it a try. If you'd like to see more videos, written reviews, links to other people's reviews of March of the Ants, or my thoughts on books and music, come visit. Just a warning, I got a review copy of March of the Ants from Weird City Games. I wasn't required to give a positive review, and I wouldn't take a game if I was. Right, you give up a free game. Yeah, I'd just say no. And here's all the stuff you don't really need to know. Thanks for watching.